Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. Welcome back to the show, Rick, and you're now in Florida. I hope your home survived the hurricanes.
Yeah, I came down to Florida, really, after not having been here since last November. And my house lost one good-sized tree from the front yard, but otherwise everything was in good shape. The compound, the development in which this house is, took a pretty big hit from the wind. There were supposedly about 500 trees down.
Well, best of luck for you, because it looks like the hurricane season's going to go right to the bitter end this year.
It's pretty amazing, really. You know, you see these 3, 4 Category 5 storms sort of stacked up forever, and I'm not getting on board for the global warming thing. You know, I know as a child of the 50s, we had pretty bad weather then too, but this is definitely a memorable hurricane season.
So, if we're going to be talking hurricanes, what kind of market opportunities do disasters like this create?
Well, there's never been a big disaster that wasn't a buy, and we're talking about everything from 9/11 to Hitler's invasion of Poland. You know, if you bought when things looked worst, you would have made out really well as an investor. And from a Keynesian standpoint, nothing could be a more direct and huge shot in the arm than rebuilding Houston and South Florida. So there's going to be a big to the extent that publicly traded companies are involved, there's always going to be a play there. Otherwise, we've got a macro stimulus taking place along the whole hurricane zone here.
Now, would that extend into the Caribbean with Canadian and American construction companies perhaps being asked to help rebuild those areas?
Well, I think there's something interesting going on there. You know, I watch these TV shows. One of them is House Hunters down in the Caribbean. And until this season, I would have thought that you had a natural growth area there for tourism. You've got a lot of baby boomers retiring, and there are a few centers. Arizona's one, South Florida, but also the Caribbean more and more. And the Caribbean basin, the Caribbean region, has flourished to the extent that these house hunter shows frequently you'll be seeing houses in the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 range, and of course that would have been unimaginable just 20 years ago. But so horrific have been the hurricanes this season, especially in places like Puerto Rico and in the Florida Keys, that you'd think twice about buying a home down there. So I think it's going to really be a setback for the growth in prices for one, but a lot of baby boomers will have second thoughts about going down to places like anything in the Gulf or south of Florida.
Rick, are people, if they're going to rebuild, take a look at more hurricane-resistant designs? I have seen shows where if you make something igloo-shaped out of concrete, put steel shutters on the windows, it will easily survive a tornado or hurricane.
I think a key problem there is whether or not your neighbors are going to be in those igloos too and survive. And, you know, you may have a house that comes through a Category 4 or 5 hurricane pretty well, but the whole infrastructure around you will get knocked down, and you'll no longer be living in the desirable place that you may have bought originally.
Yes, the ocean may come to visit, and it may not leave.
Yeah, I've seen that. I grew up on Absecon Island along the Jersey Spit, and the Army Corps has just put a big dune there, and it's kind of a joke. They spent $63 million on the project, and it was rammed down the throats of Margate City, New Jersey by the vindictive governor, Christie. But the joke is that the first hurricane is going to sweep away all $63 million worth of that mud that they pumped on the beach, and they'll just have to do it all over again.
Well, Chris Christie has been polled to be found out to be the least popular politician in the U.S. Donald Trump would be really scared to have his 15% approval. By the way, the president's tough talk there before the UN about North Korea, does that have investors nervous?
It was more debated from the standpoint of was this Trump's finest hour? And I think Trump has always been pretty good at calling a spade, or in the case of Kim Jong-un, calling a lunatic a lunatic. And I would say, regardless of what your feelings are toward Trump, if he can't rally the world to confront North Korea, then we've got a very serious problem.
Again, are there investment opportunities here?
I don't think so. We're all thinking, geez, it's too bad we gave up those fallout shelters that we had in the 60s that turned into, canned goods pantries. But no, I can't see a play because the outcome is unknowable.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after the break.
I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the U.S. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the U.S. and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, the price of gold, people would think with so much uncertainty in the world right now, again, thinking of North Korea being specific, that it should be skyrocketing right now. But today, as we speak, it's down $20.
I could get sick when I look at gold, Jim. You know, I was beating the drums for an important event, and that was the price of gold, December gold, going above the November contract high, the election high, and it did that recently. It created what I call a bullish impulse leg on the daily chart, and it was very difficult to watch gold sort of backslide. But this is what we've been seeing since 2011. We should all be pretty used to it now. We've seen 6 years of gold, from my technical standpoint, rallying to to just where everybody gets interested in it, but not a dime further. And then, it pulls back horrifically as it's done, almost to the threshold of despair. So that's where we are now. And I think that if you sort of balance the two ends there, never quite a bullion's, but always a sell-off to the point where you're kind of despondent. It's really just range trading, and I don't think gold is ready to do its thing yet. When the fat lady sings, meaning when the dollar finally starts to strengthen, I think it will have an anomalous impact on gold, that gold will finally have its day alongside a strong dollar.
How much is gold manipulated?
100%, but that's no different from stocks. Having spent 12 years on the trading floor, I can tell you that there's no such thing as a trade that occurs that's not being front-run by the firm that's on one side of it. They front-run all their customers. They essentially get ahead of their own customers on various orders. So I don't know that there's such a thing as an honest trade. So gold is manipulated in so many ways, but this range that I was just describing is not a function of manipulation. It is a trading range, and it certainly picks up interest at the top and bottom of that range. But by and large, there's no nefarious global conspiracy to suppress gold or to push it higher. It's really just been a creature of market forces.
Should companies be banned from buying their own stock?
I don't think anybody should be banned from anything in the markets. I'm not one for strong regulation because they regulate all the wrong things. And if you had no governmental regulation, you'd have the robust growth of a due diligence industry. You know, you would be able to check to find out what you need to know about companies rather than have the government involved in its ham-handed way. So I'm not a big fan of regulating anything.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario. With grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold, a drill program will commence this spring to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork. For more information, visit our website, rmroyalty.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're chatting with Rick Ackerman. Rick, President Trump's going to get to do something that no other president has been able to do, and that's appoint 6 board members to the U.S. Fed. What kind of impact do you think that's going to have, and what might he do?
I don't think it will have any impact at all. I don't see the Fed as being the force that it's generally thought to be. Yes, they've postponed a collapse in U.S. assets and stocks. Basically, we came out of the 2007-8 experience with the huge monetary stimulus, but all the Fed does ultimately is stimulate us to a higher threshold, a bigger bubble. So, there's no way within the banking industry from which Trump would make his selections, you're not going to get any mavericks on the Federal Reserve. It'll be more or less business as usual.
The Fed says it plans to unwind its $4 trillion in, I don't know what you call it, surplus cash or treasuries. How would that work, and what kind of an impact would that have on the U.S. economy?
Well, let's first get that word surplus out of our minds. You know, we're headed into a quadrillion-dollar deflationary implosion, so there's really no surplus when all the pluses and minuses cancel each other out. But I wrote on that what you were just mentioned in this morning's edition of Rick's Picks, rickackerman.com. Number one, and this is something I repeated for quite a few years, never being challenged by any actual event, and that is that there's about as much chance of real tightening as there is of a Martian invasion. You know, the Fed may do a token 25 basis points here or there, but real tightening is more than this supposed economic recovery can stand. As far as selling assets from the banks, from the balance sheet, $4.5 trillion of it, mostly garbage. The Fed made no real promises. It's going to sell whatever garbage the market will bear. So I wouldn't look for big things to happen on the asset sale side of the Fed's plan. So I don't really see much happening. They're talking about tightening one more time between now and 2018. And 3 times in 2018, that's a lot of baloney.
Do you think if that did happen, the U.S. economy could handle it?
No, I think that we're close to that point where one turn of the screw is going to bring the whole shoddy edifice down. And, we definitely can't withstand tightening 3 times. And of course, the Fed is constantly putting out this baloney about inflation being right around the corner and the economic recovery being, well, we don't want to make it any stronger than it already is. But it's basically been bulky steps all the way. the so-called recovery has really never touched most American lives. It's touched Wall Street for sure, and it certainly had an impact on asset prices. But if you get down to the level of, small businesses, we're all working as hard as we can just to keep afloat. And I would say another thing, at the level of the housing market, I just had a home listed for sale in Boulder, Colorado, a very hot market, and my realtor assured me it would sell in a couple of weeks, but it actually took 4 months, and there's been a softening of prices there, and as prices have come down, there has been no corresponding increase in sales volume. And so I can tell you, having just weathered the supposedly strong housing market that we were in last spring, that U.S. home prices have peaked, and that's going to make it even more difficult for the Fed to tighten.
If someone was really worried about this, is there anything in particular they should do in case the market does take a big dip because the Fed was too stupid and hiked rates again?
Same thing we've discussed over and over again, and that is to put everything in long-term treasuries, to basically take advantage of the fact that the whole world that they're on the wrong side of the bet. They basically believe the Fed blather about tightening and, incipient inflation and this and that, and that's a falsehood. So when the economy goes into recession or worse, interest rates are going to soften, which will produce a corresponding increase in bond prices, T-bond prices, and you get the additional kicker in that trade of the unwind of everybody who's on the wrong side of the bet, basically in stocks and other assets as opposed to treasuries. They're going to dive back into treasuries for safety.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us, and I'm glad that your home in Florida survived the hurricanes.
Well, thanks, Jim. Always a pleasure to join you.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.